Hi, class. We're going to be talking about the skin now, the integument system. So now that we've done tissues, the first system that we're going to talk about is the integumentary system. Now, the reason why we're talking about the integumentary system, it's because it's the first system that has all four types of tissues in it. It's going to have epithelium, connective tissue, muscle tissue, and nerve tissue. It's going to have all of that. So up here in that epidermis, we're going to have epithelium. And then here, you see we have blood vessels. Well, that's connective tissue. Here we have some muscle. And then here, the lamellated corpuscle, these are touch receptors. Tactile corpuscle, touch receptors. Lamellated corpuscle, also known as the Pacinian corpuscle. These are pain receptors and pressure receptors. Okay, so we have all types of tissues. So this top layer right here is the epidermis. Once we go below it, and microscopically, it has 5 layers. The dermis has 2 layers. The upper 20% or so is called a papillary layer, and then the lower 80% is called a reticular layer. So you have epidermis on top, dermis, and then we have the hypodermis, which is made up of all this subcutaneous fat. Sometimes the hypodermis, they call it the sub-Q layer. We also have the erector pili muscle here. When the erector pili muscle contracts, this is when your hair stands on end and you get the goosebumps. Okay. Tactile corpuscles, these are like your pain receptors and temperature receptors for hot and cold. And then the Pacinian corpuscle or the lamellated corpuscle, this is like your deep pressure receptor for deeper pressure. Notice we have glands here. We have a sebaceous gland. That's also known as your oil gland. So oil is pushed out, moves up the shaft of the hair, and creates this watertight seal to make the skin water resistant. It's not waterproof, but it is water resistant. Then we have sweat glands or a sudiferous gland. That's your sweat gland. Here's your other sweat gland. We have some different cells of the epidermis, keratinocytes. These make up the majority of your skin cells. More than 90% of the skin cells are keratinocytes. Melanocytes make melanin. That's mela, means black. It's going to darken and give you a darker skin pigmentation. Most of us have the same number of melanocytes, but we each produce a different amount of melanin. So we have a variation of skin tone and skin colors. There are certain autoimmune diseases that we have that can attack melanin or can actually attack the melanocyte. Okay. We have intraepidermal macrophages. These are part of the immune system. Sometimes these are called Langerhans cells. These are part of your immune system, right? So your skin is like your primary line of defense. There's good stuff on there that we need to alert your immune system. And then we have these tactile cells, Merkel cells, tactile sensory receptors. Okay, so the keratinocytes produce keratin. It's a tough protein for protection. The melanocytes produce that pigment called melanin. Your intraepidermal macrophages or the Langerhans cells or dendrite cells, these are part of the immune response, and tactile epithelium for the sensation of touch. So now the 5 layers The 5 layers of skin share, loves, getting, skin, Botox. Share, loves, getting, skin, Botox. So they're all stratum layers. Stratum means like stratosphere, it's a layer. Stratum corneum, stratum lucidum, granulosum, spinosum, germinativum, and the basal layer. These two are usually referred to as the same. So sometimes they'll call it the stratum germinativum. These are where your stem cells are, the germinative layer, or they'll call it the stratum basal layer. Right? Some people get basal cell carcinoma when these cells down here at the bottom get damaged. Okay? Cher loves getting skin Botox. This layer here, the lucidum layer, this is only found where we have thick skin, primarily the palms of your hand and the soles of the feet. If it's not the soles of the hand or the palms, if it's not the palms of the palms of the hand and soles of the feet, then you skip this layer. Okay, so again, you could see the stratum corneum, granulosum, spinosum, basal layer. Notice we don't see the lucidum. We don't see that here. And we can also see Langerhans cells. Those are your immune cells. We have sensory nerve endings, part of the Merkel cell for sensory. We have melanocytes. So when UV rays, when sunlight comes down, we don't want it to damage your stem cells. So these melanocytes push out melanin, right? This black substance, and it goes in between the cells. And it acts as a shield, right? The black pigment is going to absorb the UV rays and prevent damage of these stem cells that we have here. This top layer, the stratum corneum, it's dead cells. This is what sloughs off. The cells that we find all the way down here at the basal layer, they start to move upwards. They migrate up, and by the time they get to the top, it's usually 4 weeks, and they slough off and die. And then the body makes new ones, and they keep moving to the top, and when they're up here, they slough off and die. Okay, so it tells you off to the side the functions of the different layers. Below the epidermis, that's what we have, the dermis. So when we look at these layers, we can drag and drop, share, loves, getting, skin, Botox. And below the basal layer, right, all this stuff up here, that's the epidermis. Down below, dermis. Okay. Stratum corneum, stratum lucidum, stratum granulosum. This is granular. They make these lipids. Stratum spinosum, their spiny layer, and the stratum basal layer, full of the stem cells. What's the highlighted area, the top portion? That's the epidermis. What's the layer below that? That's going to be the dermis. And what's the layer below that? Hypodermis or subcutaneous. What's the top layer of skin? Stratum corneum. This is stratum corneum. Share, loves, getting, skin, Botox. So the highlighted yellow one is the lucidum, stratum lucidum. The highlighted yellow down here at the bottom, stratum basal. Okay, the blue layer that comes up like that, those mounds, those are called dermal papilla, and those are involved in giving you a unique fingerprint. Those dermal papilla are involved in creating your unique fingerprint. These are the terms that are involved in giving your skin different colors. So when your skin is blue, just think of your ink cartridges. Cyano, that's blue. That's typically from decreased oxygen, right? We hear it in the summer or when sadly infants fall into a pool and they drown. They pull them out, the lips are blue due to lack of oxygen. When an area is loaded with blood, lots of red blood cells, maybe during an infection or inflammation or a sunburn or you're embarrassed, that's called erythema. When your skin is yellow, that's called jaundice. Now, if you're a darker complexion, it's hard to see jaundice in the skin, but you can see in the white of the eyes where it turns yellow, okay? Or in the sclera. That's due to excessive bilirubin in the blood that's associated with some sort of liver disease. When the skin has bronzing or this golden color, it's usually an endocrine issue called Addison's disease. Albino or albinism is a genetic lack of melanin, whereas vitiligo is when there's an autoimmune attack against the melanocytes. So there can't be any production of melanin. They're different. Okay? A hematoma is a clot of blood. That's a bruise. Okay? Good place to take our break.